I'm making the rules of this. Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. So today I thought I would start a little reading vlog, a vlog in which I read the highest rated book on my TBR and the lowest rated book on my TBR. I recently inputted all of my unread books onto a Goodreads and spreadsheeted it out, and so I could see the highest and lowest rated books, which I'm so excited about. So since I'm making my own rules, I'm going to see my options first, okay? So we're going to give myself a little range, and we're going to have a good bit of fun, okay? So the actual highest rated book on my TBR, I don't own. So I'm looking for books that I own. That's another stipulation. I need to own the book. The highest rated book is Stone Butch Blues, which is by Leslie Feinberg. And I know about this book. I've not read it. Sometimes I just put books on my TBR because I don't want to forget about them. Anyways, Stone Butch Blues is, the rating is a 4.52, which is incredibly high. And it is, it was rated 32,000 times. I also have, this is the actual, on my physical TBR, this is the actual highest rated book, and it is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This has also a 4.52 rating, and it's been rated over 1 million times. However, this was on my this was on my unhaul pile. I don't know if I want to read this at all. So it's also going to be a read it or unhaul it moment with this book in particular. It's like 700 pages. I don't want to read this book actively. So I might try it and give it a chapter, it's everything. It's try a chapter, read it or unhaul it. Reading the highest and lowest rated books on my TBR. Yep. That's what you're getting here today because I'm a mess. So, but since it's my video, and maybe I'll start it and realize I want to keep it, so I'll just put it back on my shelf until I'm ready for a fantasy moment. I just read way too many fantasy books in the beginning of the year, and I'm fantasied out. So the other book that you all have been begging me to read, and I have been begging myself to read, but I somehow keep on avoiding it, is Svetlana Alexievich's The Unwomanly Face of War. So this has a 4.51 rating, and it's a 4.51 rating, and it has been rated 36,000 times. If I didn't want to read this and I wanted to go to my next unread book, let me go grab it. I'll be right back. Funnily, the next highest rated book on my TBR is another Svetlana Alexievich book, and it is Secondhand Time. This has a rating of 4.46, and it's been rated 20,000 times. So Alexievich is these are nonfiction books about the Soviet Union, about, this is like the last of the Soviets. This is about the oral history of women who fought in World War II. Her books are supposed to be extremely harrowing, extremely emotional. So those two, but in case, I'm giving myself obviously a wide berth for this. I also have, the next one would be this novel, The Silence in Between by Josie Ferguson. Now this has a 4.46 rating, and it was rated 1,983 times. So I think that's good for books, options. So this is the highest rated. It might be an unhaul it moment. Then I have The Unwomanly Face of War that I could read, Secondhand Time. But I imagine if The Unwomanly Face of War was not working for me, I don't think I would really want to go to Secondhand Time, but we'll see because it's by the same author. But I really think the one I'm going to really love is The Unwomanly Face of War. And then if I'm feeling ambitious, we also have The Silence in Between. There. There we go, right there. Okay, then when it comes to the lowest rated books, which is maybe the more exciting, wouldn't it be funny though if the highest rated book on my TBR was a DNF for me? I don't know, maybe. Okay, so stop it. In terms of my lowest rated books, at a 3.14 with 25,000 ratings, I have The Gathering by Anne Enright. Now, I recently did a video about the top 100 Irish books of the 21st century, and this was on here. This was on that list. The Gathering by Anne Enright was on that list, and it was pretty high up. It's an incredibly short book. It doesn't quite seem like it, but it's only like it's a little over 250 pages. So I have this. I also have, let me go grab it. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. I also have In the Land of Men by Adrian Miller. This was a gift to me from a friend, and it is, I know Adrian Miller dated David Foster Wallace, but this is about her time being the first woman to take on the role of literary editor in Esquire. So it's about that experience. We'll see. The friend who gave it to me, it was like, he really loved it. So I trust his opinion, but we'll see. That's like, let me see, what rating does it have? I don't know anything. It has a this has a 3.26 rating, and it was only rated 1,300 times. And then the next lowest would be, with 10,000 ratings, at a 3.36, Eli Williams, The Liar's Dictionary. So, and this is, I heard it's got this book here has fantastic wordplay, and it's really charming. It also made Steve Donahue's best debut books in 2021, and I bought it, and I wanted to read it. So this is the potential TBR for the video. So we'll see how it goes. And once I finish a highest rated book and a lowest rated book, I'll come back, and I'll tell you about it. And then we'll see if I want to continue or if it's just a checked off. And if I don't like it, I'm going to unhaul these books. I'm going to unhaul books. All of these are potentially on the chopping block. So, but I have the right to do whatever I want because this is my video and my book collection. I have a feeling that this is not going to be for right now. I'm just going to be honest with you, but I might just keep it for a time where I want something like this because it is rated so high. But do I want to keep books in my collection that I don't really want? See, these are all the questions that plague me. Okay, I'm gonna go, but this is the potential TBR right here. I'm finalizing the TBR for this video, and I'm starting on my first book. So in the finalization of this TBR, I went round and round and round with this book, The Name of the Wind. I don't want to read it. I have consulted people who know my taste, who understand my taste, who just know me and know me as a reader, and I asked their advice about this book. I don't know for sure if I'm going to get rid of it, but I know that I don't want to read it for this video, even though this is the top rated book that I own. I just don't want to read it, and so I'm okay with that. I hope you all are okay with that, but I am okay with my decision, which means that I'm left with The Unwomanly Face of War, which I'm definitely going to read for this vlog. And I've actually already started The Gathering by Anne Enright. And I think this is going to I think I'm going to like this more than the rating that Goodreads gave it. That's my prediction. I read the first 2 chapters. They were engrossing. They were stunning. So I'm already liking it. The subject matter seems kind of tough though. Because even with just the first couple of chapters, we know that one of the brothers, Liam, has passed away. Right now we're in the perspective of the sister that's closest to him in age, and their mother, there's something wrong with their mother. Whether she is just an absent mother, both mentally and emotionally, or if there's actually something legitimately wrong, like maybe she carries depression with her, but there's something about the mom that is not quite right. And so that's really heartbreaking to read about. And also there was this line early on from the main daughter. What is her? I think it's like Veronica. she was like, Mom never remembers my name. You know, Mom will go through the roll call. Well, I don't know if she even says that. She just says that, like, Mom doesn't remember her name. She'll be like, hey, you darling. And it's the name of affection is because she doesn't remember her own daughter's name. It doesn't come to her, which makes me think that it's more than just neglect, that it's some sort of like depression that their mom suffers from. But yeah, so Veronica, I was right. But she says, Mom, you know, her mother had all these children. This is an Irish book, by the way. Her mom had all these children, and even though her brother Liam has passed, her mother has more children she has replacements for Liam in the other children that she has. And yet Veronica's like, but this Liam was truly my Irish twin. They were 11 months apart. And so he was irreplaceable to me. And that made me really, really sad. Really sad. I come from a big family myself. And, you know, there are siblings that I'm closer to than other siblings. And it struck me. Now, my mother is not anything like the mother in this book at all. So I'm, you know, in the clear for that. But just the concept of that, really, I could get a little bit emotional now. But it really made me so sad to think that that a kid is replaceable, and yet for a sibling in the lineup, they're never going to be replaced. Because, you know, oh gosh, like my older sister and I were super close, and just no one could replace that bond ever. You know, she was my first friend, my best friend, and so on. So didn't mean to get a little bit emotional, but that really tugged at my heartstrings. Anyway, so this is going good. I'm like 13 pages in, so take that with a lick of salt. I'll come back either when I'm done or halfway through. I'm trying to check in. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely reading this, and definitely reading Svetlana Alexievich. I did not know that I would go on such a journey of, when I set the task out, of reading the highest rated books and the lowest rated books on my TBR. Interestingly, I did not think I would DNF the highest rated book on my TBR, and yet I have. And now I have DNF'd the lowest rated book on my TBR. So at least I'm fair. I've DNF'd The Gathering by Anne Enright. I'm going to give you a general description that I don't think is a spoiler. It was within the first 50 pages, and it was this. It was intimate, a sexual scene. It was alluding to, you know, something graphic, and it involved in it is a sickly underage girl. And I really couldn't. I thought that was really gross. And I read that and I was like, I don't know what more. The thing is like, it grossed me out so much, then I don't trust the author. I'm like, okay, so you have this description, but is it the only description? And I guess I could like ask around, but I'm not so dedicated to the book that I want to ask around to ask if there are more scenes like the one I just read. Because if there are, I definitely don't want to read it, but now I don't trust the author to not have something like that in the book. And it might be why it's so lowly rated in the first place. So I am officially DNFing it, and I'm feeling fine about that decision. At first I was like, but I was liking it, and what if that was the only scene? But I have at this point gotten the ick with this book that there's nothing about it that's pulling me into it anymore. So I've started a new book. I decided to go to my Kindle. So the lowest rated book on my Kindle, or at least one of them, it's down there. It's down there. Let me find it. It is Nama by Sarah Blake, which is a story of Noah's Ark told from the perspective of Noah's wife. The biblical story of Noah's Ark told through Noah's wife, whose name is Nama. It's got a 3.25 rating. It's only been rated 1,344 times. And I started it. So I was like, okay, let me just go to my Kindle, because I think one of the next lowest rated books was a nonfiction book. And I just was like, I don't want to read another nonfiction right now. So I'm going to Nama, which I am reading on my Kindle. I've said that like 5 times now. And I kind of like it. It's sort of weird. It is sort of weird. And so I'm enjoying the weirdness that it is offering. I'm about, 10% in of the book, which means like I'm 30 pages in, and it is about the mixed feelings that one would have of watching your entire world be destroyed, and now you're in this confined space with all of these animals that make all these noises, that have their waste, you know, here, there, and everywhere, and feeling trapped and having a lot of grief and not really having a place or an outlet to express these emotions, because it was, you know, the flooding the earth was supposed to be a purposeful thing. It was supposed to be, you know, with judgment, and so it, you know, I think the sense is that one should feel grateful to be alive and to be in this position, whereas so many others didn't get that opportunity, and yet it's a mixed. There's a mixed feeling to it all, at least from Nama, and so we're getting different time periods, time in which they are building the ark, and then time on the ark. So you're kind of flipping back and forth, but it is definitely through the singular perspective of Nama, who I like, you know, I feel sympathetic towards, because she does have all these mixed emotions, and so I care, like I'm invested in her, and wondering how she's going to work it all out, and also feeling like I don't know all of her story, but I'm curious about it. So that's Nama. I did not know that we were going to go on such a journey with all these books. So that's it for now. I will update you when I am done, or when I am further along in Nama. Sometimes it's really hard to check in about a book halfway through. So here's what I have to say. Nama is very different than I had expected. It is much weirder than I had expected, and incredibly queer. Now, I like the queerness in it. I just didn't anticipate it going in, probably because I didn't really know much about Nama going in. If you look up any kind of place of where Nama fits in terms of genre, it would definitely be a queer book, right? So there's that. And so it's a surprise, but a delightful surprise. The other thing is that the book is just strange. It moves in and out of time, and it moves in and out of magical realism incredibly seamlessly. At times, I almost feel like I'm in a fever dream, or that I'm swimming like in water, and considering that the book is about being surrounded by water, it's like almost achieving the same feeling that you would get if you were on the boat. And the magical realism reminds me a good bit of like Toni Morrison's Beloved. It's not quite like Morrison's writing, but the way the magical realism is embedded in the story is it's like it just moves in and out of reality and magic in this really I don't know, I want to say seamless way. The whole thing is like one of the weirdest books I've ever read. It's just a strange and odd book. So space buns are happening. I'm not really sure how much I like them. They'll probably come down later on today, but I was having some 2000s nostalgia moment, and I was like, I'm just going to do the space buns, okay? So, you know, there they are, okay? But I did it. Anyhow, I was checking in about Nama. I'm 75% of the way through, and I have figured out at least some of what Sarah Blake is trying to say, and Sarah Blake just decides to take full advantage of how weird and odd the story of Noah's Ark is. That the entire world was flooded except for 8 people. And these 8 people are from the same family. There's all these boats. There's all these animals in a confined space. And they are on the ark for over a year. It says how many days in the Bible, it says how many days that they're on the ark, and it's for over, I believe it's for over a year. And so they're in this confined space with all of these wild animals, and how weird that is, how odd that is. And she's bringing about the oddness through the magical realism. And then there is a part about, 60% through, where I feel like she's telling us, at least part of the book is the stories we tell about Noah's Ark. Like, who gets to tell these stories? And why is it this version of the story that we hear? We hear this cute story about Noah's Ark and how, he put the animals on the ark 2 by 2 and they stay on the ark. And it's just sort of flippantly said that they stay on the ark for this period of time. And what Sarah Blake in some ways is saying is like, who gets to tell those stories? But then also, what would it be like, the mental, emotional strain of being in a confined space surrounded by water for this amount of time and only having these select few people as companions? It's good, but it's so weird. Okay. So that's my update. I just thought it kind of hit me in its own weird way how profound it was that Sarah Blake was saying, who gets to tell these stories, and why is it this one version that is so popularly told, and yet when we tell this one version, it doesn't have the nuances of, or we're not really thinking critically about what it is like to be just going through these deep emotions from this trauma, essentially, that they've gone through. Although it's not, I don't know, is it treated like trauma? It's like this huge event, like your life completely shifts, and what it would be like to almost live in those memories, but have this present focus and this big task to take care of these animals and getting along with everyone else, and everyone else having their own grief. It's really like an interesting book. So I'm in the last hour of my reading. And yeah, and then I'll wrap up with some final thoughts. Ultimately, the book is about what I had already touched on, the way that we tell stories and the way that some people get written out of stories, even though if in the moment they were incredibly important, and yet they are forgotten or not thought about. And I think that was the ultimate place that Sarah Blake takes us. It's also just an incredibly philosophical, it's a philosophical book. It's a book where she imagines conversations with God, and God is different entities, and it's a book about grappling with so much loss. But she does it in this way that's very I can't just let Harry, I can't just let Harry's little collar clank and then not show him to you all. That would be vile of me. I think that Sarah Blake wrote this book where it is dreamlike and it's touching on a bunch of different things, and it is very magical, realistic, and it's very philosophical in its own right. And I think that that's where it loses its audience. Whereas if she was writing a story that was more straightforward about taking care of the animals and losing a world that you had known and the grief of that, and if it was just more of a straightforward narrative about what it would be like having the world destroyed and then having to spend all this time on the boat, but grappling with loss, and the way that she goes about it is very magical, infusing a lot of magic in this book. And I think that's where it loses its audience. But in that way, I think fans of the book will really, really like it. It's high risk. It's a high risk book. She's doing a lot. So I can see why it gets the low rating, even if I did quite enjoy it. And I do think that some parts worked better than others, but in some ways, that's what happens when you have a high-risk book and you're doing a ton with it. Sometimes it doesn't all come together, but then I can appreciate the risk that Sarah Blake took because it created this dreamy atmosphere of grief and loss and grappling that I think would be harder if it was just a straightforward piece. If it was just a straightforward narrative of Noah's Ark in which all the characters lose what they know and they spend 300 days on the ark, and in that time, they're processing and together and taking care of the animals. I think if it was just straightforward, it wouldn't be as thoughtful or as philosophical as it ended up being, the actual book Nama ended up being. So it's kind of like high risk. Did she pull it off perfectly? No, but it is an incredibly weird book, and that's who I'm going to recommend it to. People who like weird. People who like weird books. It's definitely going to go on my list of weird books. I would say that if you liked Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine Villante, I think her last name is, you might also like Nama. I think that if you just like weird and are up for something weird, like Bunny by Mona Awad, though that's more cuckoo. This is more philosophical and thoughtful. Nama is more philosophical and thoughtful than Bunny is. But if you are want to just dive into the weird, the dark, The Glutton by A.K. Blakemore, something like that. It's going to be more akin to The Glutton than it is going to be to The Red Tent by Anita Diamante, who that is another biblical retelling that, again, it's more grounded. It's more, thinking about the events as they would have happened and not infusing it with that magic and philosophy that we see in Nama. Okay, I have rambled, so I'm going to go. This is my first check-in for The Unwomanly Face of War by Svetlana Alexievich, and it's translated by Richard Pavir and Larissa Volonkonsky. This, I will admit to you, I have read the prologue before. I read it 2 years ago, and I know I told y'all about my experience reading the prologue, and I had gotten a couple of comments about how this book will stay with you and certain scenes will stay with you. And there was one scene in the prologue in particular that I found brutal. Not brutal for brutality's sake, but the explanation of the sort of unveiling or getting to the heart of what it was like to be a woman at war, to be a woman on the front lines, to be a woman on the battlefield. And this one little section stuck with me, and it actually scared me off because a lot of people had said that Alexievich's books are emotionally heavy. They weigh on the heart. They move the heart. And so I was scared of reading this book. So I started this again. I started it with a prologue. The one scene that really gripped my heart 2 years ago, read that again, and it again gripped my heart. And this time I kept going because I wanted to do this video project, and I did want to finally get to The Unwomanly Face of War. And what was interesting is that once you get past the prologue, it becomes a lot easier to read. Some of the scenes, at least I'm about halfway through, the scenes are not nearly as difficult as those prologue scenes. I feel like Svetlana Alexievich drops you into the deep end of the brutality and sadness and heaviness of war. And then she starts at, in some ways, the beginning. She starts at the very beginning, a very good place to start. And we see these women who are allowed to join the military for the first time. They're so passionate about fighting. They're not fighting, but contributing. they're to contributing to winning, and just how young these young women are, how tiny they are, how they were issued men's uniforms and most of them just were swallowed whole by these uniforms. There is, of course, a lot about death, how death is random. You fight alongside these young women who didn't make it. There is a lot of scenes about from the perspective of nurses who are there just watching these men have these last moments of their lives right in front of them so poignantly, and how some cried out and how some were silent in their last moments. There was also just so many descriptions of the vast amounts of blood and body parts that were seen, and just the helplessness felt when you are just one person and all of these soldiers are wounded. And then there are these moments of levity in it, which I think in some ways I didn't expect, especially going into this book, having read the prologue and finding it very brutal. But this one young woman, she is getting called up to the front to fight on the front line, and what she packs is a suitcase full of candy because she knows that she can't get it at the front, and so she's just gonna take it all with her. Or the cheer, like the way the women cheered when they finally got female undergarments to wear instead of men's undergarments, and just these moments of that you can't help but smile. And then there's, like the little details, just having one's hair cut off, and not having any hair left because you joined the military. And it's told very effectively through these chorus of voices of all of these women who fought and who served their country. And what's interesting is that they make a distinction. These women just say that their war, the way that they saw war, the way that they experienced war, was different from the way that the men experienced war. And that people wanted to hear these men's stories, but people didn't want to hear the women's stories because women weren't supposed to be at war. I'm kind of saying it very straightforward, and without much nuance. But there is this distinction through these many voices that the women had experienced this war very differently. And through these collections of voices, female snipers, women that fought on the front lines, women that were nurses, women that were nursing, like doctor's assistants, you have all of these many voices that bring you into a collective experience and help the reader understand what they actually mean when they say that the women's side of war was just totally different. And it had a different feel. It was the experience was tangibly different. And I think that the way that Alexevich writes this is that you get closer and closer to that experience. The experience of just it being, the experience being different than what we have read before or what we have heard before. And so it's so interesting. And so I will say, if you have picked this up before, if you are, or you are reading it for the first time and you find the prologue tremendously dark and like maybe too dark to stomach as a reader, I would say push through, give it a little bit longer because it doesn't quite go to that place. At least it hasn't gone back to that place. And again, I'm about 40% through, 50% through. It doesn't go back to that place of darkness. It's there, it's looming, it could, but then there's, again, these moments of I don't want to say joy, but of less heaviness sprinkled throughout. Even though, you know, many of these voices, many of these women say that remembering is so difficult. And, you know, and you know, Alexevich has to like build trust with these women that she's talking to. So really good so far. Definitely see why it's a top rated book. And I'm hoping that the second half is just as impactful and just as wonderful as the first half. So it's all going very well. I finished this book and I'm trying to think, what can I add to the first clip that, you know, that is worth saying? There is a sense that women's war is very different from a man's war, that these young women at times prioritized their looks, feeling feminine, wanting to feel feminine, and almost like a humor in the stories came out, and also just a deep sadness where a lot of the women admitted that they were mistaken for being men. They walked like a man. They carried themselves like men. They wore men's clothing. And yet they weren't men. So that was a really interesting aspect. And there is some of that brutality that is in the prologue that is also near the, like this last quarter of the book. Some of those really heart-wrenching, disturbing scenes of what happens in war that so many of the women say that they want to forget or they relive. And I mean, it goes through all of these different aspects, things that we take for granted, like falling in love or having our first kiss. And yet, these women are having those experiences, but in the most harrowing and almost like unbelievable circumstances. This is a book that I will not soon forget. It is so powerful and so immensely readable in a way that I think sometimes when people tell me powerful, I feel like I'm going to weep or that my heart is going to be ripped apart. This is not that. This is painting such a clear picture of these Soviet women fighting for their country and just how young they are and their naivety and the impact. It was so good. It was so good. I can see why it's so highly rated, because Svetlana Alexievich is able to paint this incredible portrait through a polyphony, is that right? Through polyphonic voices, through many voices. And it's effective because there's so many voices and we're not getting a singular perspective, and yet they're all saying the same thing. And so the picture as you go along just becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And you notice things that you maybe didn't notice that were already said in the first third versus the last third. And it was so powerful. It was so powerful. So if I 1000% absolutely understand, 1000% girl, I absolutely understand why this was rated so highly and why it is regarded so highly. It's because it's a book that makes an impact and does it in this way that is so effective. So that's my final thing. I guess wrap up thoughts. I really liked this. Let me know if you really liked this. I liked having a manageable reading project that was surrounded with some sort of challenge or theme. And I liked unhauling books that weren't serving me anymore, or at least putting them aside, making a decision about them. And I liked just diving into books that I've been meaning to read for years and finally doing it and documenting the process along the way. So let me know if you like this book. I would love a book. If you like this video, I would love to know. Thank you just so much for watching and spending this time with me. I really appreciate you, and I will see you hopefully all in my next one. Bye!